The gun pressed against Talia's temple felt cold, impossibly cold against her dark skin. Viktor Kozlov's breath reeked of vodka as he laughed, the sound echoing through Han Jae-won's penthouse. But Talia's eyes weren't on the Russian mobster. They were locked on Jae-won, whose normally composed face had cracked into something raw and desperate. "Let her go, Kozlov." Jae-won's voice was steady, but his hands trembled as he lowered his weapon. "This is between us." "No, no, no," Kozlov tisked, yanking Talia closer. "You see, I finally found it. The one thing the great Han Jae-won actually cares about. Not money, not territory, this cleaning woman." Talia felt Jae-won's dark eyes burn into hers, filled with an emotion she'd only glimpsed in stolen moments between them. Fear, real, genuine fear. "Take everything else," Jae-won said, his voice breaking. "Take it all. Just don't hurt her." "How touching," Kozlov sneered. "The mighty dragon, brought to his knees by a—" "I'm carrying his child." Talia's voice rang out clear and strong, the secret she'd held for 2 weeks finally breaking free. The world stopped. 3 months earlier, Talia Johnson had learned that luxury could be just as cold as poverty. She stood in the marble foyer of the Upper East Side penthouse, her reflection multiplying in the floor-to-ceiling mirrors that seemed designed to remind people like her exactly where they stood in the world. Her dark brown skin looked out of place against all this white and gold. Her cleaning company uniform, a stark contrast to the designer everything that filled this space. 47th floor, her supervisor had told her that morning. High-profile client. "Don't ask questions, don't touch anything personal, and for God's sake, Talia, don't mess this up. We need this contract." Talia had 3 jobs. This one, Elite Clean Services, paid the best, but it also demanded the most. Perfect invisibility. She'd mastered the art of being present but unseen, essential but forgettable. She pulled her natural curls into a tight bun, grabbed her supply caddy, and began the weekly routine. Dust the obsidian sculptures that probably cost more than her yearly rent. Vacuum the Persian rugs that stretched across rooms larger than her entire Queen's apartment. Polish the windows that offered a view of Manhattan she'd never afford to see from her own home. The penthouse belonged to someone important. That much was obvious. But Elite Clean had a strict policy. Clients' identities were confidential. Talia only knew apartment 4701 generated enough revenue to keep the company's lights on. She was scrubbing the kitchen's black granite countertops when she heard it, the private elevator that opened directly into the penthouse. Her heart jumped. The client wasn't supposed to be here during her Friday morning slot. Talia froze, her dark eyes darting toward her cleaning caddy. Should she call out? Hide? Finish and leave quickly? The elevator doors opened with a whisper of expensive machinery. The man who stepped out made Talia's breath catch in her throat, and she immediately hated herself for it. He was Korean, probably mid-30s, with jet black hair styled with careless precision. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, if she'd had a car, but it was his face that struck her. Sharp jawline, intense dark eyes that seemed to calculate everything they touched, and an expression of such controlled power that the air itself seemed to bend around him. He stopped when he saw her. Those calculating eyes swept over her once, cataloguing and dismissing her in the same breath. "Who are you?" His voice was smooth, accented, dangerous. "Talia Johnson, sir. Elite Clean Services." She straightened, meeting his gaze despite every instinct screaming at her to look away. Her mother had raised her to never bow to anyone, no matter how much money they had. "I have authorization to be here. Friday mornings, 9 to noon." "I know." He moved past her toward the bar, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey despite the early hour. "I'm usually not here." The dismissal was clear. "You're furniture. Continue being furniture." Talia turned back to her work, but she felt his presence like electricity in the air. She'd cleaned for wealthy people before. Wall Street types, old money families, celebrity apartments. But this man was different. There was something coiled beneath that expensive suit. Something predatory. "You missed a spot." His voice came from directly behind her. Talia jumped, spinning around. He stood close, too close, pointing at a barely visible watermark on the counter. "I was getting to it," she said, then cursed herself. "Don't talk back, don't engage, be invisible." But he smiled. It was a small thing, barely a quirk of his lips, but it transformed his face from intimidating to something else entirely. Something that made Talia's stomach flip in a way she absolutely could not afford. "You have spine," he observed. "Most people can't even look at me. Most people probably don't have 3 jobs and a mother's medical bills to pay." Talia shot back before she could stop herself. The smile widened. "Han Jae-won." He extended his hand. Talia stared at it. Her hands were wet, covered in cleaning solution. His were immaculate, adorned with a simple platinum ring that probably cost more than her mother's surgery. "My hands are dirty," she said. "So are mine." His tone held a meaning she couldn't quite grasp. "More than you know." Against her better judgment, Talia shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and lasted a fraction of a second longer than professional. "Talia Johnson," she said, though he already knew. "I know," he replied, releasing her hand and stepping back. "I know everything about everyone who enters my home." The words should have sounded creepy, but instead they sounded like simple fact. This was a man who controlled his world absolutely. "Then you know I need to finish this job," Talia said, turning back to her cleaning with more force than necessary. She felt, rather than saw, his amusement. He moved to the living room, settling into one of those modern chairs that looked uncomfortable but probably cost tens of thousands. He pulled out a laptop, apparently content to work while she cleaned around him. The next 2 hours were torture. Talia was hyper-aware of his presence, of his occasional glances, of the way he seemed to be studying her, rather than whatever was on his screen. She'd never felt so simultaneously visible and invisible in her life. When she finished, she packed her supplies with careful efficiency. Jae-won hadn't moved from his chair, but his eyes tracked her every movement. "Same time next week?" Talia asked, pausing by the elevator. "Unless you'd prefer a different schedule." His voice carried a hint of challenge. "Friday mornings work fine for me, Mr. Han." "Jae-won," he corrected. "And you're more interesting than most people I meet, Talia Johnson. I find myself curious about someone who works 3 jobs and still has enough pride to talk back to strangers in their own home." "I'm not here to be interesting," Talia said, pressing the elevator button. "I'm here to clean." "A shame," Jae-won murmured. "The world has enough invisible people." The elevator doors opened. Talia stepped inside, her heart pounding for reasons she refused to examine. "Next Friday," Jae-won called out, just as the doors began to close. "Bring your mother's medical bills." Talia's hand shot out, stopping the doors. "Excuse me." "You heard me." His expression was unreadable. "Bring them." "I don't need—" "Consider it a bonus for exceptional service," he interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "Or consider it a wealthy man's guilt. I don't care what you call it, but bring them." The doors closed before Talia could respond, leaving her staring at her own reflection in the polished steel. Her dark eyes were wide, her expression confused and wary. What the hell had just happened? On the subway back to Queens, squeezed between a sleeping businessman and a teenager with headphones, Talia replayed the encounter in her mind. Han Jae-won. She pulled out her phone and searched the name, though something told her she shouldn't. The results made her blood run cold. Korean businessman, import-export company, philanthropist. And buried deep in the articles, mentioned only in whispers and Reddit threads, alleged connections to organized crime, the Korean Mafia, Jopok. Nothing proven, nothing charged. But the whispers were there, growing louder the deeper she dug. Talia locked her phone and stared out the subway window at the darkness rushing past. She should quit. Tell her supervisor to assign someone else to apartment 4701. Take the safe route. But safe wouldn't pay for her mother's chemotherapy. Safe wouldn't cover the mounting bills that kept Talia awake at night, calculating impossible math in her head. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Brianna Martinez, who worked the night shift at the hospital where Grace Mitchell received treatment. "Your mom's asking about you, says you work too hard. I told her you're just stubborn like she is. Talia smiled despite everything. Her mother, Grace Mitchell, the strongest woman she'd ever known, was fighting stage 3 breast cancer with the same fierce dignity she'd brought to every challenge in her life. Tell her I'll visit tomorrow, Talia typed back, and that I'm fine. But as the subway carried her toward Queens, toward her cramped apartment and her impossible bills and her 3 jobs that never quite added up to enough, Talia wondered if fine was just another word for barely surviving, and whether Han Jae-won's offer was salvation or something far more dangerous. The next Friday, Talia brought the medical bills. She'd argued with herself all week, had drafted and deleted a dozen texts to Elite Clean requesting a different assignment. But every time she tried, she'd see her mother's tired smile, hear Brianna's worried updates about experimental treatments they couldn't afford. So there she stood in Jae-won's penthouse foyer, manila envelope in hand, feeling like she was making a deal with the devil himself. You came. Jae-won emerged from his office, dressed more casually today in black slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Talia noticed the edge of a tattoo on his forearm, Korean characters she couldn't read. I came to clean, Talia said, holding up her caddy with her free hand. The bills were... I shouldn't have brought them. Why not? He moved closer and Talia caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and spiced. Because I don't know you. Because accepting money from strangers has consequences. Because... She stopped, frustrated with herself for explaining anything. It's complicated. Life usually is. Jae-won gestured toward the living room. Leave the cleaning supplies. Sit with me for a moment. Mr. Han? Jae-won. He corrected again, his tone firm, but not harsh. And I'm not asking as a client. I'm asking as someone who might be able to help. Against every instinct, Talia set down her caddy and followed him to the seating area. The city sprawled below them, Manhattan glittering in the late morning sun. She perched on the edge of an armchair while Jae-won settled across from her, completely at ease in his domain. Tell me about your mother, he said. Why? Talia's guard shot up immediately. Why do you care about some cleaning woman's problems? Because you're not just some cleaning woman, Jae-won replied, his dark eyes steady on hers. You're someone who works 3 jobs to save her mother's life. That speaks to character, and character is rare in my world. What world is that exactly? Talia asked, even though she already knew. Import, export? His smile was sharp. You've been researching me. Seemed smart, considering you apparently research everyone who enters your home. Touché. Jae-won leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Yes, I have a business. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, there are aspects of it that might concern you, but my offer to help your mother has nothing to do with any of that. Everything has to do with everything, Talia countered. People like you don't help people like me without expecting something in return. People like me? There was an edge to his voice now. Rich, powerful, connected. Talia met his gaze without flinching. I'm not naive, Mr. Han. I know how the world works. Jae-won, he said for the 3rd time, and this time it sounded like a command. And you're right. I don't do anything without reason. So here's my reason. I'm tired of being surrounded by people who want something from me. You're the first person in years who doesn't need me for anything except a paycheck you've earned. And now you're trying to change that by making me need you, Talia pointed out. Jae-won sat back, something like respect flickering across his features. Smart, beautiful, and sharp enough to see through bullshit. You're dangerous, Talia Johnson. The compliment, beautiful, hung in the air between them. Talia's skin warmed despite herself. I'm a single woman working 3 jobs to keep my mother alive, she said firmly. The only thing dangerous about me is my exhaustion level. Single? Jae-won's eyebrow raised slightly. That's what you focused on? Talia stood abruptly. I should get to work. Thank you for the conversation, but I can handle my mother's bills myself. She made it 3 steps before Jae-won's voice stopped her. $300,000. Talia froze. What? That's what you owe, isn't it? Between the surgeries, the treatments, the experimental drugs insurance won't cover. He stood, moving toward her with predatory grace. $300,000 that you'll spend the next decade trying to pay off. working yourself into an early grave while your mother feels guilty for being sick. Each word hit like a physical blow because they were true. All of it was devastatingly, impossibly true. How do you... I told you. I know everything. Jaewon stopped just in front of her, close enough that Talia had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Let me pay it. I can't. You can, he interrupted. And before you ask what I want in return, I'll tell you. Nothing. This isn't a transaction. It's a gift. Nobody gives gifts that big without strings, Talia whispered, her heart hammering in her chest. Then consider it an investment, Jaewon said softly, in seeing what you become when you're not drowning. The sincerity in his voice broke something in Talia's carefully constructed walls. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this beautiful, dangerous man who somehow saw her when the rest of the world looked through her. I need to think, she managed. Take all the time you need. Jaewon stepped back, giving her space. But while you're thinking, know this. Your mother's next treatment is scheduled for Monday, the one her insurance denied. The one that could add years to her life. Talia's breath caught. How did you... I know everything, he repeated, but gentler this time. It's both my greatest asset and my worst flaw. She should run, should grab her cleaning supplies and never come back. But instead, Talia heard herself ask, why me? Really? Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when you looked at me that first day, you didn't see Han Jaewon, the businessman. You didn't see power or money or connections. You just saw a man interrupting your work. He smiled sadly. Do you know how rare that is? To be seen as just a person? The vulnerability in his admission made Talia's chest ache. She understood that loneliness, that desperate hunger to be seen beyond the roles life forced them to play. She was the responsible daughter, the tireless worker, the strong black woman who could handle anything. He was the powerful businessman, the leader, the man who commanded rooms with his presence. But in this moment, in this space between them, they were just two people carrying invisible weight. One condition, Talia said finally. Name it. I work for it. However long it takes, whatever you need. I'm not a charity case, Jaewon. If you pay my mother's bills, I pay you back with my time, my skills, whatever I have to offer. Something dark and pleased flickered across Jaewon's face. Whatever you have to offer. Don't make it weird, Talia warned, but she couldn't stop the small smile tugging at her lips. Wouldn't dream of it. Jaewon extended his hand. So we have a deal? Talia looked at his hand, the same hand she'd shaken a week ago, starting whatever this strange connection between them was. She knew she was stepping off a cliff, knew that accepting his help would change everything, but her mother's face flashed through her mind. Grace Mitchell, who'd worked 2 jobs to raise Talia alone after her father left, who'd never asked for anything, who was fighting for her life with quiet dignity. Talia placed her hand in Jaewon's. We have a deal. His fingers closed around hers, warm and secure, and for the first time in months, Talia felt like maybe she could breathe. She had no idea she'd just sealed her fate. 6 weeks passed, and Talia's life transformed in ways she couldn't have predicted. Her mother's treatment was approved, paid for, begun. Grace Mitchell was responding well, her color returning, her energy slowly rebuilding. Brianna sent daily updates filled with cautious optimism. Talia had quit 2 of her 3 jobs, keeping only elite clean, specifically the Friday morning slot at apartment 4701. But it wasn't about the cleaning anymore. You're doing it wrong, Jaewon called from the kitchen, where Talia was attempting to make kimchi jjigae, a Korean stew he'd insisted she try. I'm following your instructions exactly, Talia shot back, stirring the bubbling pot. You're stirring too aggressively. Kimchi jjigae needs patience. He appeared behind her, his chest brushing against her back as he reached around to guide her hand. Gentle. Let the flavors develop naturally. Talia's breath caught at his proximity, at the warmth of his hand over hers. This had become their routine, cooking lessons supposedly, but they both knew these Fridays had evolved into something else entirely. There, Jaewon murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Feel the difference? Yeah, Talia whispered, though she wasn't thinking about the stew at all. Jaewon stepped back abruptly, and Talia felt the loss of his heat like a physical thing. The tension between them had been building for weeks. Stolen glances, accidental touches, conversations that stretched hours past when she should have left. Tell me something true, Jaewon said suddenly. Talia turned to face him, wooden spoon still in hand. What? Something real. Something you don't tell other people. His dark eyes were intense, searching. We dance around each other, Talia. We pretend this is just... What? Friendship? Gratitude? What else could it be? But even as she asked, Talia's heart hammered with the truth they both knew. You're intelligent enough to answer that yourself, Jaewon said, moving closer. So tell me something true. Talia's mind raced. She could deflect, make a joke, maintain the careful distance that kept them both safe. Or she could be brave. I dream about you, she admitted, her voice barely audible. And it terrifies me. Jaewon's expression shifted, something raw and hungry flickering across his features. Why? Because you're dangerous. Because I don't know if what we have is real, or if I'm just grateful. Because... She stopped, frustrated. Because I know what you really are, Jaewon. I've seen the men who come to your door. I've heard the conversations you think I don't understand. You're not just a businessman. No, he agreed quietly. I'm not. So why do I still want to be here? Talia set down the spoon, her hands trembling slightly. Why do I look forward to Fridays, like they're the only thing keeping me alive? Because you see me, Jaewon said simply. He closed the distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything his reputation suggested. Just like I see you. Not the roles we play, not the masks we wear. Just us. Talia leaned into his touch, despite every warning bell in her head. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and she watched his gaze drop to her lips. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably, Jaewon agreed. But I've made worse. He kissed her then, and Talia's entire world narrowed to that single point of connection. His lips were soft but insistent, tasting of the whiskey he'd been drinking earlier. She made a small sound in the back of her throat, and Jaewon's other hand came up to tangle in her natural curls, which she'd left loose today. The kiss deepened, and Talia felt herself melting against him. This was insane, reckless, everything she'd sworn she wouldn't do. But God, it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jaewon rested his forehead against hers. Talia Johnson, he murmured. What are you doing to me? Before Talia could answer, Jaewon's phone buzzed insistently. He cursed in Korean, pulling away to check the screen. Whatever he saw made his expression harden instantly. I need to go, he said, his voice shifting into something cold and commanding. Now! Talia tried to keep the disappointment from her voice. Now! Jaewon grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair, then turned back to her. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. Don't answer the intercom. Fear prickled down Talia's spine. Jaewon, what's happening? Nothing that concerns you, he said, but his eyes betrayed him. He was worried. Just promise me you'll stay here until I get back. How long? Promise me, Talia. His hands gripped her shoulders, his intensity almost frightening. This is important. I promise, she said, confused and scared. Jaewon kissed her again, hard and desperate, then he was gone. The elevator doors closed behind him, leaving Talia alone in the vast penthouse with a pot of abandoned kimchi jjigae and 1,000 unanswered questions. She tried to follow his instructions. She really did. But after 2 hours of pacing, of checking her phone compulsively, of imagining every terrible scenario, Talia's curiosity and concern won out. She opened Jaewon's laptop. He'd never locked it around her, a trust that both touched and troubled her. She shouldn't snoop. She knew she shouldn't, but she needed to understand what she was really getting into. The files she found made her blood run cold. Shipping manifests, financial records, names and photographs of men Talia recognized from news reports about organized crime, and deeper, buried in encrypted folders she had to work to open, details about territorial disputes, rival organizations, and something called the Kozlov problem, Viktor Kozlov, Russian Mafia, expanding into territory that J1's organization controlled, and according to the documents, negotiations had broken down. Kozlov had made threats. Talia was so absorbed in reading that she didn't hear the elevator until it was too late. The doors opened, and her heart stopped. But it wasn't J1 who stepped out. It was a Korean man she'd seen before, Bai Soo-hyun, J1's right-hand man. His normally composed face was streaked with blood, and he was supporting another man who looked barely conscious. "Miss Johnson," Soo-hyun said, surprise flickering across his features. "You need to leave, now." "What happened? Where's J1?" Talia demanded, moving toward them. "He's handling it." Soo-hyun's voice was tight with pain. "But Kozlov knows about you." The words hit like ice water. "What?" "He's been watching. He knows J1 has been spending time with you. And he's decided your leverage." Soo-hyun grimaced as he lowered the injured man onto the couch. "Boss sent me to get you to a safe house." "I'm not going anywhere until I know J1 is okay," Talia said firmly. "Miss Johnson—" "Talia." She moved to grab the first aid kit she'd seen in the bathroom. "And if J1 is in danger because of me, then I'm already involved. So either tell me what's happening, or I'll call the police right now." Soo-hyun's laugh was bitter. "The police won't help against Kozlov. He owns half of them. Then tell me what I can do." For a long moment, Soo-hyun studied her with those calculating eyes, so similar to J1's. Then he nodded slightly, respect flickering across his features. "Help me stop the bleeding," he said, gesturing to his injured companion. "And then we wait for the boss to call. But Miss Johnson, Talia, you should know something." "What?" "Han J1 doesn't let people in. Ever. The fact that he's kept you close, that he's exposed you to Kozlov's attention." Soo-hyun's expression softened slightly. "It means you matter more to him than his own safety, than the organization, than anything." Talia's hands stilled over the first aid kit. "How do you know?" "Because I've worked for him for 12 years, Soo-hyun said quietly, "and I've never seen him afraid. Until today when he realized Kozlov might target you." The words settled over Talia like a weight, pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. She'd fallen in love with a Mafia boss, and now both their lives were in danger because of it. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Talia had dozed fitfully on J1's couch, unable to leave despite Soo-hyun's continued insistence that she go to a safe house. The injured man, Soo-hyun had called him Minho, was stable, sleeping off the pain medication Talia had found in J1's extensive medicine cabinet. Soo-hyun answered his phone on the first ring, his face grave as he listened. Talia sat up, her heart pounding. "Understood," Soo-hyun said in Korean, then switched to English. "She's still here. Refused to leave." "Yes, I know. I'll tell her." He hung up, his dark eyes finding Talia's. "The boss is coming back. He's not pleased you're still here." "I don't care," Talia said, though her stomach twisted nervously. "Is he hurt?" "No. But the situation with Kozlov is worse than we thought." Soo-hyun stood, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Kozlov isn't just after territory anymore. He wants to destroy J1 completely, and he's decided the best way to do that is through you." "Me?" Talia's voice came out strangled. "I'm nobody. I'm just—" "You're the woman who made Han J1 human again," Soo-hyun interrupted. "In our world, that makes you everything." Before Talia could process that, the elevator opened. J1 strode out, and Talia's breath caught. His suit was rumpled, his knuckles bruised and bloodied, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. But when his eyes found hers, something cracked in that cold facade. "You were supposed to be gone," he said, his voice rough. "I don't take orders well," Talia replied, standing on shaky legs. "You should know that by now." J1 moved toward her with predatory intent, and for a moment Talia thought he might yell, but instead he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. You stubborn, impossible woman, he murmured into her hair. Do you have any idea what could have happened? What could still happen? Then tell me, Talia demanded, pulling back to look at him. Stop protecting me from the truth and just tell me everything. Jae-won's jaw clenched. He glanced at Soo-hyun, who nodded and quietly ushered Min-ho toward the guest room, giving them privacy. Sit, Jae-won said finally. They settled on the couch, and Talia watched as this powerful, controlled man struggled to find words. My father built our organization from nothing, Jae-won began, his voice distant. Korean immigrants, trying to survive in a city that didn't want us. The Jopok, our version of the Mafia. It wasn't just crime, it was protection, community, family. And you inherited it, Talia said softly. I inherited everything. The power, the respect, the blood on our hands. Jae-won's expression was hollow. I told myself we were better than the others, that we had codes, honor, that we protected our people. What changed? You did. He looked at her then, his dark eyes burning with emotion. For 15 years, I've lived in this world. I've made decisions that kept people alive and decisions that got them killed. I've been shot, stabbed, betrayed, and I felt nothing. I was a machine, Talia, cold and efficient and empty. Jae-won. And then you walked into my home with your pride and your strength and your refusal to be invisible, he continued, his voice breaking. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be human, to want something beyond power and control, to care about someone more than myself. Talia's eyes burned with tears. Is that why Kozlov is targeting me? Because he knows you care? Kozlov is a rabid dog who needs to be put down, Jae-won said, his voice hardening. He's been trying to take my territory for 2 years, but it's not about business anymore, it's personal. He wants to hurt me, and he's realized the best way to do that is through you. So, what do we do? Talia asked, even though fear clawed at her throat. We? Jae-won's laugh was bitter. There is no we, Talia. I'm sending you away. New identity, new city, enough money to start over. Your mother, too. Brianna can arrange for her care to continue anywhere in the country. The words hit like a slap. You're getting rid of me. I'm keeping you alive. Jae-won stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. Don't you understand? Kozlov will hurt you just to hurt me. He'll torture you, kill you, and make me watch. I can't. His voice broke completely. I can't lose you, Talia. I can't. Talia stood too, moving into his path and forcing him to stop. Then don't lose me, fight for me. I am fighting for you, Jae-won said desperately, by sending you away. No. Talia placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms. You're fighting your guilt, your fear, but you're not fighting for us. There is no us. The words were sharp, cruel, designed to push her away. You're a cleaning woman who got caught up in something she doesn't understand. This was always going to end badly. The words should have hurt, would have hurt, if Talia hadn't seen the desperation in his eyes, the way his hands trembled as he tried to maintain distance between them. You're lying, she said calmly. You're lying because you think if you make me hate you, it'll be easier for me to leave. But I know you, Han Jae-won. I see past the cold businessman, past the mafia boss, past all the walls you've built. I see you. Then you see a monster, Jae-won whispered. I see a man who paid for my mother's cancer treatment and called it an investment. A man who teaches me Korean cooking and shares his favorite whiskey. A man who spent his whole life protecting people, even when it cost him his humanity. Talia moved closer, refusing to let him retreat. I see a man I'm falling in love with, even though it's the stupidest thing I've ever done. Jae-won's control shattered. He pulled her against him, kissing her with desperate intensity. Talia kissed him back, pouring every ounce of courage and fear and love into that connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jae-won rested his forehead against hers. I can't protect you and fight Kozlov at the same time, he admitted. If you stay, I'm vulnerable. He'll use you against me. Then let me help, Talia said. I'm not helpless, Jae-won. I'm smart, resourceful, and a hell of a lot tougher than I look. This isn't a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation, Talia interrupted. You taught me that. So here's my offer, I stay. I help however I can, And we face this together, or I walk away right now and you never see me again. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Talia said, echoing words he'd once told her. But I'm done running from hard things. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, being invisible, not making waves. And where did it get me? 3 jobs and crushing debt and a life half-lived. Talia, you made me remember what it feels like to be seen, she continued fiercely. To matter, to want something beyond just survival. So don't you dare take that away from me now because you're scared. Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with those intense eyes. Then slowly he smiled, a real smile full of admiration and resignation, and something that looked like hope. You're going to be the death of me, Talia Johnson. Or your salvation, she countered. Same thing in my world. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Talia felt the shift between them. They were no longer pretending this was temporary, that they could walk away unscathed. They were all in, for better or worse. Okay, Jaewon said finally. You can stay, but you follow my rules. You don't take unnecessary risks, and if I tell you to run, you run, understood? Understood, Talia agreed. Good. Jaewon pulled out his phone, already shifting into command mode. Because Kozlov made a mistake tonight, he showed his hand, and now we're going to destroy him. But neither of them knew that Kozlov was already 3 steps ahead, and the worst was yet to come. The trap was sprung 48 hours later. Talia had spent the time learning the reality of Jaewon's world. Soo-hyun had walked her through security protocols. She'd met other members of the organization, men and women who treated Jaewon with reverence, and Talia with cautious respect. She'd learned about territories and alliances, about the delicate balance that kept the underworld from erupting into all-out war, and she'd learned that Jaewon was more than just a Mafia boss. He was a protector, a leader who'd kept his people safe for years through strategic brilliance and carefully calibrated force. But Viktor Kozlov was a different breed entirely. He didn't play by the old rules. He was chaos incarnate, interested only in destruction. We have a meeting tonight, Jaewon told her that morning, his expression grave. Neutral ground. Kozlov claims he wants to negotiate. I don't believe him. Then don't go, Talia said immediately. I have to. Jaewon cupped her face gently. If there's even a chance we can end this without more bloodshed, I have to try. For my people, for you. Let me come with you. Absolutely not. Jaewon, no. His voice was firm. This is not negotiable. You stay here, where Soo-hyun and the others can protect you. I'll have my best people with me. Talia wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his eyes. This was one battle she wouldn't win. Promise me you'll be careful, she said instead. Always. Jaewon kissed her softly. And Talia, if something goes wrong, don't. She pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't say goodbye. Say you'll see me later. He smiled despite the gravity of the situation. I'll see you later. But later never came. 2 hours after Jaewon left, Soo-hyun's phone rang. Talia watched his face drain of color as he listened, her stomach dropping. What happened? She demanded when he hung up. It was a trap. Kozlov's men ambushed the meeting point. Boss and 3 others are pinned down. Soo-hyun's voice was strained. He's calling for backup but told me to stay here with you. How many does Kozlov have? At least 20. Maybe more. Talia's mind raced. 20 against 4. Jaewon was good. His people were trained, but those odds were impossible. We need to help him, she said. My orders are to keep you safe, Soo-hyun insisted. And my orders are to help the man I love, Talia shot back. Now we can stand here arguing while Jaewon dies, or we can figure this out. Your choice. Soo-hyun stared at her for a long moment, then cursed in Korean. You're as stubborn as he is. Fine. But you do exactly what I say. Understood? Understood. 20 minutes later, Talia found herself in the back of an SUV with Soo-hyun and 4 other armed men, racing toward the warehouse district where Jaewon was trapped. Her heart hammered against her ribs, fear and adrenaline making her hands shake. Stay in the vehicle, Soo-hyun ordered as they approached. No matter what happens, and if I tell you to drive, You drive." But when they arrived, the situation was even worse than they'd thought. Kozlov hadn't just ambushed the meeting, he'd turned it into a spectacle. J1 and his men were surrounded, disarmed, forced to their knees in the center of the warehouse. Kozlov stood over them, gun in hand, savoring his victory. And then Kozlov's men spotted their SUV. The firefight erupted before Talia could process what was happening. Soo-hyun and the others returned fire, using the vehicle for cover, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. Talia saw Kozlov drag J1 to his feet, saw the Russian's gun press against her love's temple, and something inside her snapped. She was out of the SUV before she could think, running toward the warehouse, ignoring Soo-hyun's shouted warnings. Several of Kozlov's men spotted her, weapons rising. "Stop!" Talia's voice rang out clear and strong. "I'm who you really want, isn't it? The woman Han Jae-won cares about?" The warehouse went silent. Kozlov's eyes found her, and his grin was pure malevolence. "Well, well," he said. "The little bird flies into the trap. Come here, darling." Slowly, Talia walked forward on trembling legs, her eyes locked on Jaewon's. His face was a mask of fury and terror. "Talia, no," he growled. "Run. Now." "I can't," she said simply. "I won't." When she was close enough, Kozlov grabbed her, yanking her against him. His gun transferred from Jaewon's head to hers, cold steel pressing against her temple. That's when the scene from The Hook played out. Kozlov's threats, Jaewon's desperate offer to give up everything, the moment hanging on a knife's edge, and Talia's revelation, "I'm carrying his child." The words exploded into the silence. Talia didn't know why she said them, only that they felt true in her bones, a possibility she'd been too afraid to confirm, but couldn't deny anymore. Jaewon's expression transformed. Shock, hope, fear, love all flickering across his features in rapid succession. "A baby?" Kozlov laughed, but there was uncertainty now. "Even better leverage than I thought." "No," a new voice said from the warehouse entrance. "It's your death sentence." Everyone turned. A woman stood there, Korean 50s, impeccably dressed, flanked by at least 30 armed men and women. "Councilwoman Park," Jae-won breathed. "Did you really think I'd let you handle this alone?" The woman, Park Ji-eun, one of the most powerful figures in the Korean underworld, strode forward with absolute authority. "You're like a son to me, Jae-won, and nobody threatens my family. This is between—" Kozlov began. "You made it everyone's business when you broke the accords," Park interrupted coldly. "When you targeted civilians. When you forgot that our world has rules precisely to prevent chaos like you." Kozlov's gun wavered. He was surrounded now, vastly outnumbered. Even his own men were lowering their weapons, recognizing the losing position. "Let the woman go," Park said, her voice like ice, "and I'll give you a 10-minute head start before I unleash every organization in this city on you, or refuse and die right here." For a long moment Kozlov hesitated. Then, cursing in Russian, he shoved Talia forward. She stumbled, and Jae-won caught her, pulling her protectively against him. "This isn't over," Kozlov snarled. "Yes," Park said calmly. "It is. You're dead already. You just don't know it yet." Kozlov and his men retreated, and the moment they were gone, Jae-won's hands were on Talia's face, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine," Talia assured him. "But Jae-won, what I said, is it true?" His voice was raw with emotion. I don't know. Maybe. I've been so stressed I haven't paid attention to—" Talia stopped, meeting his eyes. "Would it matter if it was true? Would it matter?" Jae-won's laugh was almost hysterical. "Talia, you're everything that matters. You and whatever future we might have. Baby or no baby, you're mine. If you'll have me." "I'm yours," Talia whispered. "I think I've been yours since the moment you told me to bring my mother's bills." He kissed her then, desperate and reverent, and Talia heard Soo-hyun discreetly ordering everyone to give them space. When they finally broke apart, Park Ji-eun was watching them with a small smile. "Han Jae-won," she said warmly. "In all my years, I never thought I'd see you look at someone the way you're looking at this woman." "Councilwoman, Bring her to dinner," Park interrupted. I want to meet the person who finally made you human again. She glanced at Talia. And perhaps discuss what comes next. Because you can't stay in this life forever. Not with a family to protect. I know, J1 said quietly. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. Kozlov was found dead, the combined work of every major organization that had been hunting him. J1 began the delicate process of stepping back from active leadership, transitioning power to Soo-hyun and other trusted lieutenants, and Talia took a pregnancy test that confirmed what her body had already known. I'm having a baby, she told J1, her voice shaking. Your baby. His response was to sink to his knees in front of her, pressing his forehead against her stomach. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for giving me a reason to be better, to want more than this life. You were always more than this life, Talia said, running her fingers through his hair. You just needed someone to remind you. They married quietly 3 months later, just family and close friends. Grace Mitchell was there, healthy and radiant, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter marry the man who'd saved her life and stolen her daughter's heart. Brianna was Talia's maid of honor, still bemused by the entire situation, but fiercely protective of her best friend. And when J1 said his vows, he included a line that made Talia's heart soar. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. And I promise to spend the rest of mine making sure you never regret walking into apartment 4701. I could never regret you, Talia whispered back. Not in a million years. Years had passed since the night in the warehouse, and the life Talia and J1 had built together bore little resemblance to where they'd started. J1 had fully extricated himself from the organization, using his considerable resources to start legitimate businesses, restaurants, import companies, real estate. He was still Han Jae-won, still commanded respect, but the weight of violence no longer hung around his neck. Talia had gone back to school, earning a business degree and becoming his equal partner in their ventures. She'd never forgotten where she came from. They regularly donated to causes supporting working families, medical care, and community development. Grace Mitchell lived in a beautiful apartment nearby, cancer-free for 4 years now, spending her days spoiling her grandchildren. Because yes, grandchildren plural. Mama, a 5-year-old girl with J1's dark eyes and Talia's golden-brown skin, came running through their home. Not a cold penthouse anymore, but a warm, lived-in townhouse, filled with life. Appa says we can have kimchi jjigae for dinner. Does he now? Talia smiled, watching her husband appear in the doorway with their 2-year-old son on his hip. I was overruled by the council, J1 said solemnly, though his eyes danced with humor. Apparently democracy is important. Their daughter, Minseo, named after J1's late mother, giggled. Democracy means everyone votes. That's right, baby girl. Talia pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair. And what did we say about Appa's cooking? That he tries very hard but still burns the rice sometimes, Minseo said seriously. Jae-won gasped in mock offense while their son, David, named after Talia's father, laughed from his perch. Later, after the children were asleep and they sat together on the couch, Talia leaned against Jae-won's shoulder. Do you ever miss it? She asked quietly. The power, the control, all of it? Not even for a second, Jae-won said, kissing the top of her head. I spent 15 years building an empire of fear. But you, Talia, you helped me build something better. A kingdom of love. That's very poetic for a former Mafia boss. I have hidden depths, he said, grinning. I know, Talia whispered, tilting her face up for a kiss. I've seen every single one of them. And in the quiet of their home, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Han Jae-won and Talia Johnson held each other close. Two people from different worlds who'd found in each other exactly what they'd been missing all along. A reason to hope, a reason to love, a reason to believe that sometimes even the darkest stories can have the brightest endings.